And I really truly understood that, there's no I in teamwork. And I can remember a young Darryl, aspiring leader who just wanted to kind of climb the ropes, right? But I knew that the work was much bigger than me or one individual person. The work was really about what's happening, the impact that's being made, and good work really truly requires.
Thank you for joining another wonderful episode of Life Empowered Living. We're in a little bit of a different space today. I usually say welcome to my living room, but now today I'm going to say welcome to the table. I'm so excited to be here with you on today, and I'm also excited about this very special guest, Darryl Anderson. And so usually what I do, Darryl, welcome. Thank you again.
Yes.
But usually what I do and what I've done today is no different is before the meetings, before our podcast, I usually think about that person. I put some thought, leadership into who I think they are and how they've shown up to me. So I'm going to give you what I thought of you, and then we're going to just jump from there. Don't be afraid. It's good. So, but when I think of you, seriously, I think of you as a father.
Okay.
I think of you as a son. I think of you as a mentor. I think of you as a leader of people, not just an organization. And for me, that was very important. I think of you as being very mission-focused, service-oriented. I also think of you as being authentic. And I also think of you as being an advocate when I think about the work that you do. We'll talk about that. And then the last thing I think about is the fact that you are results-driven. And so this is how I have thought of you or imagined you in my mind, or really even experienced you. It's not even just imagined, but experienced you. But who would you say you are? How would you define you?
Yeah, you know what, Celeste? Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me on the show. I think you kind of wrapped it up in a nutshell there. I'd say probably my most proud moments are being able to be a dad to my 3 boys, of course, working in partnership with my beautiful, lovely wife, Shayna. We've dealt with challenges with child loss and all the things over the last couple of years, right? But just really the strength in family values and principles and just wanting to instill those things into my kids is first and foremost. And I think that trickles into the work, right? And the leadership opportunities in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually what I wanted to talk about in terms of the work that you do in the community. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So I have the privilege and honor of serving as executive director with Eris Senior Network. We are a nonprofit organization based in Milwaukee and Waukesha counties. And so primarily our focus is serving older adults age 60 plus through essential services, right? And so when we think about the aging population, a lot of the challenges that they're faced with, access to transportation, to healthcare appointments, or to get to a grocery store. Many of our seniors in the community are socially isolated. They're living alone. They don't have family nearby. And so what we do is we partner with the community. All of our programs are volunteer driven. And so we work with more than 800 community members who serve as volunteers to help carry that work forward into our community. And so excitingly, we're celebrating 45 years of service in the community this year. But again, it's a privilege and it's an honor to work with a dynamic team, with the community, and we have a phenomenal board that partners with me and our team to carry this work forward.
I love that so much. And when you think about that work, I instantly, when you talk about kind of that older population, I think about at a very young age, I was a CNA and I worked in a nursing home. And it was one thing to take care of the elderly. When they were just elderly, right? They just didn't need to be alone. But then the next level for me was I ended up on the hospice unit. So I was taking care of a lot of patients who were passing away. And what was interesting about that space was that when you are a CNA and you're probably the closest people to them because their family isn't coming as frequently and that type of thing, you really become the ears, or you become the person that you're developing the relationship with that elderly person. And so I say all that to say it's hard work.
It's tough work.
It's hard work physically, and I think it's also tough work emotionally. So how do you manage being able to do that work, right? To get to the results, drive the goals, but also continue to have that heart for people.
Yeah. I think what I try to do, Celeste, is really focus on the impact, understanding that we're really in the business of helping to change lives. I think I really appreciate you sharing about your experience as a CNA, you know, connecting with the families, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in our world, connecting with possibly some of those caregivers, right? Who
Mm-hmm.
may still be in the workforce. They're working. They're also trying to figure out, how do I support grandma or grandpa or mom or dad as they're
Mm-hmm.
aging, and so, I think about the value of the work that we're leading, but also the connectivity to community and the thoughtfulness and the caring individuals who say, hey, I'm willing to give my time and talents and resources to help my fellow neighbors, right? I think also it's about paying it forward, right? Keeping in mind that these are individuals that help pave the way for many of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what greater way to be able to pay homage, to them as they're respectfully aging in place, right? So, but there are the days where, you hear some of the unfortunate stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, coming from working in nonprofit work and even with background in youth and families, seeing some of the trauma that individuals may face in marginalized communities. And so I always try to find a balance and um, being intentional about self-care,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when I get home, sometimes leaving the work at the front door and
Mm-hmm.
really enjoying the time with family.
Absolutely. Now, if I am not mistaken, your academic background is in marketing, isn't it?
Graphic arts.
Graphic arts. Yes. How did you get into this work?
It's funny. I mean, I had all the thoughts, all the visions, right? At one point, I wanted to be an architect or an architectural engineer. And, I'll say basic math, I'm well at, but anything that's more advanced than, what calculus or something like that is not really my forte. So, but all jokes aside, visual arts, graphic arts,
Mm-hmm.
is my educational background. But very early on after college, so I went to Jackson State University and made the decision to continue to live there a few years after
Mm-hmm.
school. And so in that, I was introduced to the YMCA.
Mm-hmm.
And so I served as a front desk attendant, the guy who scanned membership cards as people were walking in and
Mm-hmm.
maintaining the fitness floor. And so that opportunity turned into me being able to work with young people during the summer months for a
Mm-hmm.
summer day camp. And so I left Mississippi in 2012,
Mm-hmm.
relocated back to Gary, Indiana, which is home for me.
Mm-hmm.
And had the privilege and honor of serving as program director with
Mm-hmm.
a local boys and girls club in the very neighborhood and community that I grew up in. And so that then led to an opportunity for me to relocate and move here to Wisconsin, which I've been here for roughly 12 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And so starting off with Boys and Girls Club in Kenosha, oversaw all of their teen diversion of programs.
Mm-hmm.
And then came back to the YMCA in Milwaukee, where I led membership operations.
Mm-hmm.
So, you keep in mind, you got this young kid who is at the front desk working with members to now going out into the community and really promoting the YMCA for community members
Mm-hmm.
to take advantage of the services and that opportunity, right? And so I think nonprofit work has just been
Mm-hmm.
really all that I know.
Mm-hmm.
I had a couple of stints, I would probably say, during college and working in retail work, but I'll say I do enjoy my weekends. So work,
Yes.
being at work at 3 a.m. for Black Friday sales is not a thing that I'm at this point in time that I think I want to commit to.
Mm-hmm.
And really not even shopping for day after Thanksgiving sales. But nonetheless, the flexibility,
Mm-hmm.
Nonprofit work, of course, it's a heavy lift.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that we don't have the weekends or the evenings,
Mm-hmm.
after hour commitments. But, I think even about the organization that I work for,
Mm-hmm.
we really are strong proponents of prioritizing time with family and having that flexibility. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So thinking about where you are now, So I have two questions in my head at once, so let me try to parse them out. Thinking about where you are now versus where you started, especially with that graphic design in mind, would you follow this path again?
That's a good question. So I get to clarify, is your question how am I utilizing my background in graphic arts in the work that I lead now?
No, I'm actually
Okay.
thinking about what your original intent was.
Okay.
Out of high school, out of college, versus the path that life is taking you. If you were to look back, or if you were to redo it again, would you follow the same path?
Got it. Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Um, you know, there's this saying that those of us who choose the path of nonprofit work, it's not a get rich quick
Oh yeah,
scheme,
yeah.
right?
You don't do it for money.
You're not doing it for money, right? You're absolutely doing it for the purpose of knowing that you're making a difference in the lives of people who really need it and deserve it, right? I think deserving is a key word. So, I am well. I am blessed. I am grateful for the resources that me and my family that we have. But I would not choose another path.
Okay.
Right? I don't think I would choose another path. Yeah.
That's so good. Now, here's the other question, because when you started your journey, you started with young people. These are two very different demographics. So, what were some things that you had to learn as you shifted to this new demographic of people that you're serving?
Yeah, that's a good question, Celeste. I think one of the first things was really having a real understanding of what their needs look like.
Okay.
And here's a saying, young people oftentimes don't know what they need, but older adults do. And so it's kind of bridging the gap between the two. But also, when you think about the work that we lead, as you would engage with young people or with older adults, it's still finding a balance and setting boundaries.
You don't say.
Yes. So, finding a happy medium there. But I think it was absolutely about the learning factor, right? Being that I had not deeply engaged that demographic of individuals specific to older adults. I think being that I am a member of the sandwich generation, I have aging parents who don't live local. I'm an only child, so a lot of the support defaults to me, and I try to do the best job in from a distance, being able to help when I can. So even that, like coupling that journey with me stepping into this work with Eras, has been eye-opening, but it's also taught me a lot. And I think in having the lived experience on top of the work, it allows me to be able to lead in a different way that hopefully is impactful for others.
Absolutely. I always share this story, probably about 5, maybe 7 years ago now. My son said, I don't know what I did, something he didn't appreciate. And he said, it is hard work raising parents. And so I always think about that, especially being in the sandwich generation. And I'm dealing with the same thing with my parents as well. And so when you think about being in the sandwich right in the middle, are there things that you're doing or thinking about now that could potentially make life easier for your kids when you become of a certain age and they are taking the responsibility of raising you?
Yeah. It's funny you asked that question. My wife and I were always talking about, how we're working right now to plan for the future and, thinking about the safety nets and making sure that we have our ducks in a row. As in the years to come, we approach becoming aging adults, as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's also about, even with our younger children and our oldest son, educating them, right? They see grandma and grandpa and, they may sometimes see some of the things that, we're stepping in to help support, but ensuring that, we're instilling those family values into them, Not that as we age, we want to become a burden of yours, but more specifically, none of us really know what the future holds.
Absolutely.
And so there may be a time where you might have to step in to help mom or dad, and so this is potentially what that can look like. But our job and our responsibility is to make sure that we have done the best job ourselves to have the resources available when we meet that point in time. So, and sometimes those are difficult conversations to have. I'm having them right now with my own parents, and so, I think also the work that I had the opportunity to lead at Eras helps even position my own mother and father differently, because now I have the knowledge around what ageism looks like and how it can impact or be negatively impactful or effective for individuals who are older adults.
Absolutely. One of my probably most frequently used words, probably two of them. One is grace and one is empathy. And really grace, because I tend to, this is funny that I say this, but sometimes I move at a faster pace.
Okay.
And so something as small as being in a grocery store and having to slow down for the person that's a little bit older to walk past you or get like, okay, Auntie, you can do it. Like, go ahead, but learning to just take a pause and create space for them to be right where they are in that moment, knowing that one day, right, it's going to be me, and I'm going to want somebody to have some grace and some empathy for me as well. And so what do you think are, as a leader, what are some of the things with Eris that you've learned that further develop you as a leader?
Yeah, I think it's really all about pouring into people. Um, we have a widely age diverse team, and understanding that we all come from various generations. So how we think, how we process information, even how we may deliver on action may look a little bit different. Our values may look differently, right? And so spending the time to understand what that looks like collectively with the team. But as you know, my role is primarily it's about resource, right? And so it's about making sure that the team has what they need to be successful in this work. We have the real conversations, and sometimes those conversations may not be easy or tough conversations, right? But it's always rooted in, solution, right? And so what are we working to solve, and what are we working to solve together? Is really what's most important.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about you leading the team. When you and I worked together over the last year to put your strategic plan together, I always noticed how you came in and you provided feedback, but you let the team lead. How did you get there? What value do you see as a result of that? And would you coach other leaders to do the same?
Yeah. There was great intentionality in that, and I think it started from just thinking about the younger leader, in Darryl, and being in spaces where I wanted to feel elevated or promoted or seen, right, in the work that I was doing, and knowing that I had good ideas and good suggestions. And so for me, now that I'm empowered to be able to create those spaces, it's really about making sure that other people feel empowered in those same ways, and knowing that we want to be able to bring your creative thoughts to the table. Ultimately, what's our objective in mind, right? And so collectively, how do we ensure that people have the opportunity to be a part, that inclusivity, how to be a part of the bigger picture here, right? So work in progress, right? I'm still working, every day to make sure, that we're being inclusive within the organization and including, the team collectively, even in some of the big decisions that we have to make, this year, as you know, we work together in partnership with the strategic plan. We've seen some unfortunate funding shifts, right? More at the government, federal funding side, and so to be proactive there,
Mhm.
we've had to make some tough decisions around consolidating some of our office spaces across the counties.
Mhm.
And so in that, it started with conversations with our team, and
Mhm.
our board, and it was, what do we need? What do we need to be successful, right,
Mhm.
in this work as it relates to space?
Mhm.
And so in turn, I think our team has shared appreciation that they were able to be a part of those discussions that led to the decision to move some of our office spaces around, which in turn creates some cost savings for us,
Mhm.
right? So that we can sustain our programs, but also making sure that we're providing this conducive work environment and space for the team, as a whole.
And so when you think about the inclusion of your team to make difficult decisions, like, so get it, that's one piece of just bringing the other voices in,
Mhm.
but you are really embarking on very difficult decisions. And if we were to be very honest about it, it can be down to something as detailed as, can I feed, right, this area, this community, this person today or not? What is your approach to decision making, especially when I feel like so much of it's stuck?
Yeah, that's a good question, Celeste. I think it starts with kind of processing what we know,
Mhm.
right? The known factors. Um, Looking at how, once we know what could potentially be a risk factor, it's about partnership and collaboration, right? So, we have amazing stakeholders, right, that support our work. We have a phenomenal board, and so a lot of times that board is kind of my springboard to say, hey, this is where we are.
Mhm.
And maybe we've met a stopgap. We may not necessarily know what direction we should be going in, but it's having those conversations, right? And really looking at scenarios,
Mhm.
right? What's worst case? What's
Yep.
best case, right? Are we looking to find a place in the middle? Are we leaning? Clearly, we're not leaning towards the worst case scenario side,
Correct.
right? So, how do we mitigate the risk factor? But I think it's more about having those authentic conversations,
Mhm.
being real. And while many of us may want to be optimistic, I'm an optimist, but I also have to find that balance in
Mhm.
that in reality,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so, what I'd say is it's interesting because I'm embarking upon my third year here at Era's Senior Network, and we hear the stories around people step into new spaces, and then you really kind of feel like you've gotten thrown into the fire, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But I say that jokingly to say that you know in these 3 years, my team and I and our board, we've navigated some tough things
Yes.
together,
Mhm.
and so it's one of the many things that I'm proud of about the organization and our team is that
Mhm.
we know that we can do this
Mhm.
when we come together, right? And so, again, I think it starts with the authentic conversations. It starts with looking at the factors, the things that we know,
Mhm.
and then working to figure out what do we need resource wise to help mitigate whatever those risk factors are.
Hmm. Interesting. One of the things that I do, and I'm so curious because I've heard you say we, like the whole conversation, which I love, I'm for it. But one of the things that I do is I do a DISC assessment. And one of the things that, in a portion of it, it talks about the strengths that you bring to the table. What would you say your strengths are?
You know what? I love conversation. So collaboration is a top strength,
Okay.
and I'd say it's a needed strength in this
Hmm.
level of
Hmm.
work. Um, you know, I I'm very solutions oriented,
Okay.
right? Sometimes, to the point my wife says, "Okay, you don't have to try to fix every
Yeah.
problem, right?" But I am. I'm solutions oriented, right? So when I see that there could potentially be a problem,
Hmm.
it's always being kind of channeled in and focused on what do we need to do to prevent that from happening, or if it's we need to shift away from whatever that thing is, right? So, but I would definitely say collaboration is a strength.
Hmm.
Um, I think for me, it's also and again work in progress. I wouldn't say that I fully arrived there. I'm always open and continuously learning, but I would say that it's even the business acumen, right? Understanding the operations, understanding, the flows of, whether it be revenue streams, what's coming in, what's going out. And I would say that good leaders, you may not necessarily have to have your hands fully in it because you have other leaders and team members who can lead in those spaces. But being aware, the awareness factor of what's happening in your organization, where your team is at, right? And understanding what, as we look at growth opportunities and we look at developing people, having that dialogue and those conversations to understand what do I as a leader need to do or have to be resourceful and pouring into that person, right? And so I think those are skills that in my work that I've been able to demonstrate. But again, not saying fully arrived, still work in progress.
Absolutely.
But definitely areas that I like to put more focus into.
And so when you think about those areas that you've mentioned, how did you know that they were a strength versus a significant opportunity for growth, right? So I think about leaders and I hear you talking about collaboration, but usually a leader, a more green leader, I'll say it that way, is working to shine themselves as opposed to bringing, right, the rest of the team along to shine with them. So when did you know that collaboration was a thing you should do as a good leader versus, no, I have to be out front with my cape? Like, when did you figure it out?
Yes.
What was the moment?
I'd say it was earlier in my career, but when I really truly understood that, there's no I in teamwork. And I can remember a young Darryl, aspiring leader who just wanted to kind of climb the ropes, right? But I knew that the work was much bigger than me or one individual person. The work was really about what's happening, the impact that's being made, and good work really truly requires collective community involvement that in turn creates magic, which we call impact, right? In this work. And so I don't, minimize that thought or that theme. I've seen a lot of amazing things happen when people come together, when people come together. So a strong proponent of that. And again, you'll probably hear me when we have staff events or there's speaking opportunities. First and foremost, I'm always pointing in the direction of the team because they're the reason why the work is happening.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that so much. And so when you think about your strengths, when you think about your whys behind your strengths, what's your legacy? What do you want to leave behind?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, when I think about legacy, I've got 3 wonderful boys who I pray and hope will carry the torch. I think for me, it's really instilling the core values and principles around caring for community, caring for your fellow neighbor. And when you're empowered, and we're all empowered to lead, it's creating space for others and the willingness to use time, talent, resources, the time, talent, resources that God gave us to pour into those individuals, right? To be a conduit, right? And I think when I think about legacy, that's ultimately, the errors, the work at the Y's or the work at the Boys and Girls Clubs. There's always going to be other leaders that are going to come and follow and do great things, right? And so I think the other part is, as I have advanced in working at different companies, I always aim or work to be able to say that I left it in a better place than what I found it for the next leader that comes in. And so that's not to say that I'm leaving Eris, but, needless to say, whatever the future holds, wanting to make sure that my legacy is that Darryl was someone who showed up authentically and true as himself, who really truly operated in a space where he showed that he cared for people, but most importantly, wanting to make sure that we create safer, stronger communities that are rooted in inclusivity and diversity. I think those things are very, very, very important,
Absolutely.
very important.
Absolutely. So let's talk about diversity.
Yeah,
I was teetering on whether or not we would bring this up, but I do know that in this particular climate, even the language around diversity has been challenged. And we talked about difficult decisions, but how have you navigated the ability to still serve, but yet serve in a way that is safe for you and those that you serve?
Yeah, that's, I'll say I've lost a lot of nights of sleep, with that particular theme around DEI, right? We're aware of all of the shifts, right? And the conversations that are being had in the community. And what I will say is that being a leader of color and promoting the work and the need for support in many spaces that don't necessarily look like me is not easy. It's not easy. And I think for me, me and other leaders, right, who identify as people of color, it requires a great deal of intentionality and really, 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 really being committed to the mission, right? Because, you can easily be blinded by all of the things and all of the conversations and what you hear in social media, right? And so it's really about, moving past that and understanding that there are other individuals of younger individuals of color who are aspiring leaders. They want to be able to do great work. And so I have a responsibility, right? To stay in the fight, because if the people who stayed in the fight 50 years ago did not, will we be where we are today?
Absolutely. And we just lost a great one yesterday.
Yeah.
So, and every time I get news about someone, transitioning, I am reminded that we all are going to leave here
Absolutely.
at some point. And so, that's why I always think about the impact. I always think about the legacy. And so when you were thinking about, the responsibility for those that are coming before you, what else are you doing to stay focused so you're not getting distracted with all the other things that are happening?
Yeah, it's fun. My mom would probably appreciate this. So my mother is a diehard CNN and MSNBC fan, right? So she's plugged into the news, and so while I understand the value and the importance around being in tune with world news, sometimes it can be very, very, very overwhelming, right? And then also what you hear is not always rooted in fact, and so. For me, it's about really kind of creating that balance and disconnecting and detaching myself from the news outlets and the social media. I also really enjoy cooking.
I'm hungry.
So I spend a lot of time in the kitchen. My dad actually is a licensed chef.
Really?
He's a licensed chef. So he taught me a lot of what I know.
Okay.
My wife, we met in 2013. And so I do about 99% of our cooking.
Okay.
We've got a really good partnership and agreement. So I do most of the cooking and she does usually the dishes, which is not a thing that I enjoy. So it's a good partnership. But, I've taken a liking for the culinary arts, right? So I spend time there. I enjoy golfing, so, the things, again, that bring me joy, I try to be intentional about creating space for that to cut out all of the unnecessary noise that's happening in the background. I think another thing that gives me some balance and hope is, we try to have some of those dinner table conversations with our kids, right? We want to, even though they're younger, we want to educate them and really truly understand, at their age level what's happening. It's our responsibility as their parents. And so even the dinner time conversations, right, can be uplifting because of the things we're hearing in the news. But then when you hear the perspectives of, you know, a 5-year-old or a 17-year-old, you're like, okay, they get it, even at this young age. So I've got hope. I have hope.
They can make it better. They can do it.
They can do it. They can do it.
I love that so much. So now tell me, we haven't talked much about your wife, but tell me about your wife. How did you know she was the one? And what has she taught you?
She's taught me patience in a good way. I say that in a good way. You know, I'm an only child. I think I shared. My wife comes from a family of, it's her and 5 other siblings.
Wow. Okay.
You know, so quite a few, right? And I'll be honest, early on when we were dating, I was not the best person to compromise with. I wasn't. And I'm willing to acknowledge that, right? And so compromise was really a skill that she taught me, right? And she was very patient with me, you know, to the point now where we just celebrated 10 years of marriage in May of last year. You know, so we made it over that 10-year hump, right?
Yeah.
And we're excited for the next 25, 50 plus, you know, as long as God allows us to stay here. But so my wife is an attorney by trade. She's a graduate of Howard University. So in our home, because we both attended HBCUs, usually there's some battle wars there. She thinks Howard is the elite. I'm thinking Jackson State University is the elite, but all in good fun.
That's fun.
And so she is the director of compliance at Wisconsin Community Services, WCS.
Okay.
You know, and so we both have taken the path in leading and working in nonprofit, in the nonprofit sector.
And so she has taught you patience and she has taught you compromise.
Yes.
Has those skills made you a better leader?
Absolutely.
Okay.
1000%. I couldn't imagine 21-year-old Darryl leading Eris right now. I don't think my team would probably envision me in that space as well.
That is hilarious. Yeah. I love it. But now that's a very good segue. Knowing what you know today, what would you tell your 21-year-old self?
Trust the process. Trust the process. And tough things are going to come your way. It's no way to detour that.
Yeah.
Tough things are going to come your way. But the thing is, have you prepared yourself and do you have what's needed to be able to navigate those tough things? I think I would also tell my 21-year-old self, you know, there's always this kind of taboo, even more specifically in the Black community, that, you know, we may not all be open to therapy because so we're letting people into our personal space, right? And we're being vulnerable. Therapy helps.
Get it. Yeah.
Therapy helps.
Absolutely.
So
I learned that even therapists have to have a therapist. That is a requirement.
Yes.
And so when you think about all of the things that you have to listen to and process and internalize and try to figure out, absolutely, therapy, absolutely
100%.
helps. And so you have a heart of service. So you say yes to service. You say yes to community. You say yes to family. Your personal family, your extended family with your parents. What do you say no to?
You know, I think I say no to
See, nothing.
I want to, you know, and I remember a very specific conversation that you and I had maybe a year or so ago, where you were encouraging me. You said, Darryl, you have to find those spaces to say no to certain things.
Yeah.
I think what I say no to is individual. So I'm not going to say conflict because conflict is good, right?
Absolutely.
At times. But I say no to people who are unwilling to be solutions oriented. So we may have a difference of opinion, which then may be a disagreement, right? But if we can come to the table with a thought in mind around what are our differences, but then ultimately what's the end goal, right? What are we working to resolve? People who aren't willing to operate in that space, and they're really just stuck on me and my thoughts and my beliefs, and
can't even hear.
They can't even hear.
Yeah.
They're not open to other outside perspective. There's a fine line in the sand for me with those individuals. And so wish you all the best, but it's impossible for us to have any dialogue.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, you're saying no. That makes me so happy. And so, I kind of said at the onset here that I think of you as a mentor. I've observed how you've worked with your team and have gently guided them. And I think that you're amazing at that. But where do you go? Where do you get your mentorship, your guidance, your wisdom, your...
Yeah. I've got, I have, I'm grateful that I have some friends in the community who are leading in very similar spaces and types of work as executive directors or CEOs, and so having those individuals as friends and colleagues to share thoughts and ideas, or even sometimes to just kind of let it all out, right? To vent. But I also have two mentors, who I really, really, really appreciate their support. One is Vincent Lyles, who's the president and CEO of Milwaukee Succeeds, in partnership with the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, and so we have, a series of coffee connects in the morning, and he's always a listening ear. And I met Vincent actually in my very early years in Boys and Girls Club, and then that, of course, transitioned to where I'm at now. And so I'm always grateful for, our seasoned leaders who are willing to make that time for some of us who are stepping into these leadership spaces and roles. And, there's the unknown factors, the things that we may not, know how to navigate. And so knowing that someone who's already done it, they've done it well, and they can share those, nuggets of knowledge with us is helpful.
Good. So you have the person or persons that you could go to as well. So as we are preparing to wrap up, and I have thoroughly enjoyed our time, kind of the tenets or the pillars of Life Empowered is to embrace, it is to empower, and it's to elevate. And so when I think about embracing, I think about the inclusivity that we've talked about, being able to really rally ourselves and wrap our arms around everybody, right? We're not trying to exclude anybody. We want everybody to be successful. And then when we think about the ability to empower, that is really giving them the tools, right, for them to be successful. And then that elevation is really around that platform for them to grow, right? So that push, that advocacy, or whatever that they need to actually operate in the power that they have. When you think about those terms, what do they mean to you? Does one resonate more than another? Where do you land?
Yeah, I think, Celeste, I think the empowerment is really what stands out, right? We have to consider that many people are at different phases in their lives, right? And so if we have the ability to just pour something small into someone to let them know you are very capable, right? You can do this, right? And even sharing, being vulnerable enough to share our own journey and stories can really, I think, open up some pathways where someone could say, wait, okay, he or she or they did that. I'm navigating some very similar things here. I can do that too. So I think empowerment is really strong. And I think I say that word with a little bit of intentionality too, because empower is a part of our updated strategic plan, right? And so when we think about our mission statement, it really is, it's empowering seniors and engaging generations. And so we want to be able to put the the power, the ability back into the hands of the individual, right? To let them know you have control of your story. So I think that word resonates the most with me.
Okay. And one of the things we have not talked about, but I've definitely heard it in this dialogue, is your faith. So can you just talk about that a little bit, how that has shaped you, even back from when maybe you were very young, adolescent to now? Did you grow up in church or? Yeah.
I grew up in church in a way, Celeste, where it was Monday, Wednesday, Sunday, sometimes Saturdays, right?
Yes.
And so, matter of fact, my mother and father, they're still members of my church home when I was a child in Indiana. Definitely, of the Christian faith. And I think what I'll say is in that, I've had a series of life events that have really challenged me to dig deep, into my faith bag, right? And of course, we've had conversations about, my wife and I, we lost 2 children, and my son, Bryce, we had a daughter who was stillborn in 2017, and then my son, Bryce, passed away in 2020 with complications due to cerebral palsy. He was 3 years old, and so my wife and I, we have both in this journey been met with challenges around, how do we even navigate this? How do we move forward? Right. And so I know that if it were not for faith, I wouldn't be here today. I know that.
Yeah.
And so to that point, faith is a very large part of how I try to navigate life.
Absolutely. I love that. And it feels like it is intertwined in everything, because even with the work that you do, you have to have a high level of faith, especially in this current environment, to get up and try it again, the next day. I often talk about the cartoon. Do you remember the cartoon Pinky and the Brain?
Oh, yes.
And so it said, what are we doing tomorrow? Same thing we always do, trying to take over the world. You gotta just keep trying, So so that's what that kind of puts me in the mind of. But thank you so much for this time. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you so much for just being the amazing person that you are. So I'm so glad that we were able to do this. Those of you that are watching, thank you so much. I know that hopefully you had a pen and some paper so you can take some of these nuggets, these leadership characteristics that he described. If you don't have it, make a checklist and then kind of gauge where you are. Do 1 of 5 to each, so then you know what you'll need to work on this year as well to continue. Last question for you.
Yes.
Okay. You are at December 31st. 2026, and it has been amazing. It has been a fantastic year. What happened?
We have totally eliminated our budget deficit.
Okay.
And we have more than enough plentiful volunteers to support the growing number of seniors that we're working with in the community.
Okay.
Yeah. I think from a work aspect, from a family aspect, if I can share, it's personal family. Everyone is healthy. Everyone is thriving. And ultimately, we're happy. We're happy, and we're living in abundance. And grateful. What brings joy to me is honestly, it's seeing my kids happy and seeing my wife happy. So, and I want to be happy too in that, right? But I think most, I won't speak for all, but most fathers and husbands, when we can step back and say, all right, my wife is happy, right? And it's not because we have all the things, it's because we have what we need and maybe some of the things that we want, right? Within reason. Those things bring me joy. So
absolutely. I love that. Well, thank you so much again. Yes. Darryl, thank you all so much for joining. And remember, live life empowered. Take care. Goodbye.